Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to create this summer lemonade animation loop, and I will show you how to model this, how to animate the bubbles and the moving liquid and everything, and then how to give this some nice glass and liquid look. And I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Now let's jump right into empty Blender file, and first of all, let me just drag a selection around the light and the cube, press X and delete. We don't need those, but we'll leave the camera in place. And now let's rotate this a little bit, and let's press Shift A, and we'll start with the circle. And I will go ahead and modify the vertices to something like 24. Tab into the edit mode, and let's make this smaller, something like this. And press F to fill. And E to extrude, that will be our glass. And now we'll just need to give this some shape. So first of all, press X and delete the top face like that. Press 2 for edge select, Alt click this bottom loop, and press Ctrl B to bevel and increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel to something like this. And now we'll press Ctrl R, slide this up, and then press Ctrl B and create another bevel. Let's reduce the number of cuts like this. And now Alt click this loop and press S to scale it inside. Just like that. And we'll be using subdivision surface modifier. So let's Alt click here, Alt Shift, select this one as well, and this one in the middle, and press Ctrl B and create the bevel that will create our supporting loops. And now press Ctrl R and create one near the top. And now to make this shade a little bit better, we'll need to add some more geometry. So let's press Ctrl R and increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel to something like this. Now, if you want more like decorative design or something like that, you can press Ctrl R here, add new loop, right click to release, and do the same thing here. Now Alt and Shift and select the first one, and we can press S, then Shift Z to scale this only on X and Y axis, and just scale it out like this to give this, you know, some interesting detail. And now let's make sure the normals are pointing outside, so they should be looking like this. If they're not, let's press A and Shift N to recalculate them. I will disable this. Now tab out, and let's go to the modifiers panel, and let's add solidify modifier. And let's increase the thickness like this. And now let's just add subdivision surface to make this nice and smooth, and increase levels to 2, right click and shade smooth, so that'll be our glass. If you feel like this is too fast for you, or you don't understand some core concepts, make sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through low poly illustration all the way to full character illustration, textured environments, and much more. And I build the courses as creative projects, each with its own style. And every time there's a new technique or something needs explaining, we stop for a while and you get an in-depth explanation. But in the end, you still get a full project result. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Now let's create a liquid inside. So press 1 on a numpad for front view. And let's toggle the X-ray right here so we see the shape of the glass. And let's press Shift A and we'll create a new circle. But let's make this double. Let's make this 48 vertices. Tab into the edit mode, scale it down, tab out, and now press G then Z and move this up so the origin point is above the thickness of the glass. We don't want these to overlap. Now tab into the edit mode, and we don't want to fill this with F. We press Ctrl F and choose a grid fill. That'll give us this nice quad geometry. And we can now press E and extrude this up like this. And now press A and Shift N to recalculate normals. I do that almost every time. And now press Ctrl R and increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel to something like this. And confirm and right click to release. So this will be our liquid. So now let's press Ctrl R, create one more edge near the top. And now let's drag a selection and select all of this. Go to the object data properties and create a vertex group, and that'll be the surface, and hit assign. Now we'll tab out and let's press Ctrl 2. That's the shortcut for adding subdivision modifiers. So if you go to modifiers, you will see it already here. Now right click shade smooth, and let's go and add displace modifier. So that'll be in the deform category, and let's go displace. And now let's enable only Z direction. It will look really weird, but now we'll choose the vertex group surface, so they'll only displace the level, and you can see we can control it with the strength. So let's do something like 0.1. And now additionally, let's create a new texture there. Let's go to the texture settings and switch this to clouds, for example. And now we can play with the size. Let's make this a little bit larger, something like 0.8 maybe, or maybe something like 0.4 here. Now the great thing here, if you go to the modifiers, you can switch the coordinates of the texture, and we'll use an empty objects to animate those. So let's press Shift A and let's add an empty. And now let's press Shift D and X and duplicate this. And now we'll parent this one to the one in the middle. So hold Shift, select this, press Ctrl P and choose parent to object. And now if we rotate this, we are moving this one as well. And we'll be rotating this around the y-axis. So let's hit N on the side panel and make sure you're on the frame one here. And let's right click and insert single keyframe for the Y rotation. And we'll need to set the start and the end of the animation. And here, this will need to be a little bit longer. So let's do like 360 frames, because then the water level would be too hectic. And if you really want to loop this, you need to complete the full circle. So let's move to 361. Now let's enter 360 here, right click and insert single keyframe. So now the empty will do this. And basically we're just moving this one here. And now we'll select the liquid and switch coordinates to object and use the eyedropper tool to pick this empty right here. And now if you go closer, you will see the water level is animating because we are shifting the texture using the position of this object. So that's really neat trick. And now to make sure it loops properly, let's select the one in the middle, press A here in the timeline and choose T and choose linear. They'll interpolate in linear way. So now it just continues and doesn't slow down. So that's the water level or the liquid level. Now let's create some ice cubes. So I'll press Shift A and let's just create cube. Tab into the edit mode and press S to scale it down to something like this. And to better see it, we can tab out, press G then Z and move it up. Now let's disable the X-ray, tab into the edit mode and right click and subdivide, and do that once again by pressing Shift R. And now I want to extend the corners a little bit. So press 1 for vertex select. Select this vertex, hold Shift and select all of the other corners. And on the other side as well. Now press S to scale them out a little bit like this. Now tab out and let's press Shift 2 to add subdivision surface. And we can increase the levels here to even 3. And make sure you do it for the render as well. Right click, shade smooth. And now we'll add the same displacement here. And let's create a new texture. Let's choose the clouds. And let's go back to modifier and reduce the strength to something like 0.05. Maybe even less. So we just want like a small wobble there. So it's not perfect cube. And then here we can decrease the size a little bit to make it more pronounced. Or like this. Okay, I really like that. And now we could easily just drop this cube into the liquid, but we want to move it with the liquid surface. So let's enable the Xray View. And there's a very easy way to do that. Let's just go to the constraints options and let's add shrink wrap constraint. But before we pick an object, let's press G and move it down there, because the closer it is to the surface, the less hectic it will be. So something like this, so it's a little bit above the surface. And now if you pick the liquid object here, it will copy the animation because it sticks to the surface at that point. Now we can just press R, then Z, rotate this a little bit, or create different kind of rotation. It will stick only with the location. Now we can press Alt T and create another one here, maybe make it smaller. And then maybe third one, give it a different rotation. You will see all of those will float above the surface. Now let's create the bubbles. So let's press Shift A and we'll add a circle. And let's tab into the edit mode, scale it down like this and press F to fill and just move it up here. doesn't really matter too much. And now we can tab out, go to the particle settings, and we'll create a new particle system. But first I want to create the particles, and I want to create a quad sphere. So go Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and search for extra objects, and just check the box right here for Add Mesh Extra Objects. And now if you press Shift A, you can go Mesh and Round Cube and switch the preset to Quad Sphere and reduce this to 4 divisions. Tab into the edit mode and scale it down like this. And we can tab out, press G and Z and move it under the glass like that. Right click and shade smooth. There'll be enough for the bubble. And let's just call this bubble right there. And while we're at it, we can name other objects as well. So this will be bubbles. There's the glass, liquid, and cubes can be cubes. So let's select the bubbles, go to the particles options and create a new particle system. Now we'll scroll down and in the render settings, switch from halo to object, and let's pick the bubble object right here. And that already gave us some bubbles right here, and we can increase the scale and increase the scale randomness. So they are varied, and now if you play it back, they will just fall down. So we need to go into fill weights and disable gravity, and now they will act according to their velocity options right here. And now it's set to 1 meter per second, so they'll be, so let's set something like 0.1, and that's more like it. And for the frame start, that's 1, and end will be 360, same as the length of our animation. And now we'll set the lifetime, so they'll rise up and start to disappear at some point. So let's do something like 40 here, and let's see how that looks. And it's too low, so I think we need to go 60 here. I think that's quite okay. And I already really like this. So basically that's the particle system. That's everything we need to do. To make the animation a little bit more smooth, let's switch this in output to 30 FPS. And I think this looks great. So the one last thing we need to do with the bubbles animation, if you want to loop this, you need to have same bubbles at frame 1 and frame 360. And we can achieve this by duplicating the particle setting. So let's create a new slot right there and choose the particle settings from the first one right here. And now just duplicate it and we'll change the settings. So let's do -360 here on the frame start and 1 on the frame end. And now we'll need to bake this. So let's go to the cache options and bake all dynamics. Let's wait it out. And we have baked all the settings for both particle systems. And now you can see on the frame 1, they're already there. Frame 360, they look the same, so they will loop perfectly. So now we have the looping liquid, we have the ice cubes, and we have the looping bubbles. So that's basically it for the animation we now need to make this look great. So let's press Shift A and we can add a plane that will serve as a background. Tab into the edit mode and press S to scale it up. Tab out and let's look from the camera. So press 0 on numpad. And we need to go a little bit closer. So in the view options, you can enable camera to view. And now if you use your standard viewport controls, you are controlling your camera. So let's do something like this from an angle a little bit. Something like that. And now disable this. Okay, and let's set up some render settings. So go render, I'll use cycles, switch to GPU and enable denoising and switch my denoising here to GPU. And I will use motion blur because we'll need to animate this. And for the samples, I will go with 128 here for the render. That should be enough for the preview animation, and press Ctrl B to limit the render preview only to camera bounce. Now let's expand this. Now if you press Z and go rendered, you will see this is too dark. It's just a clay render. So first of all, let's give this some light, and I will use HDRI for this because I want to use glass and I need as much reflections as possible. I'm going to use HDRI from Polygon. This is the one I picked, the Hilly Terrain 01. You will find the link in the description. So now I will switch this to shader and world settings. And I'll press Shift A and go texture and environment texture. And now I'll just open my EXR and connect the color. You can see we already have some light, but I don't like where the shadow goes. I want this to be lit from this side. So we need to rotate this, and we can do a mapping node. And the easiest is to use Node Wrangler. So go edit preferences if you don't use it yet. And in add-ons, search for node and enable Node Wrangler right here. Check the box, close the preferences. And now if you select the EXR and press Ctrl T, that will give you the mapping nodes right there. And now we can just rotate this along the Z axis, and we can rotate it so the shadow points this way right here. And you can see this already looks much more dramatic when we have it lit from the background. And now just select the glass. Let's go to materials, create a new one, call this glass. And here just expand the transmission, increase to 1. And with the roughness, let's go all the way to 0. And for the IOR, let's do something like 1.4. And if you want this to be like less refractive, more stylized, you can go something like 1.3. It should be enough too, but I will keep this at 1.4. And now select the liquid down there and choose the same glass material. Now duplicate it. I will rename this to liquid and just change the IOR to 1.3. So it's less refractive, and make sure you go all the way white here, and same for the glass. So it's as translucent as possible. And now I will select the cubes and choose the glass object right there. And this is already starting to look great. Now for the bubbles, let's select just the one bubble and choose the liquid material right there. But we'll duplicate this and change alpha to something like 0.5, so they're not so present. And now we can just play with how this looks. For example, I want more shadow castings here, and to better see how that looks, let me just select one of these cubes. I'll press Alt D, move it outside here, and disable and remove the constraint. Now press Alt R to reset the rotation and move it down here. Like this. Let me check the position here. Okay. So let's place some of these cubes here. So I'll press Alt D and Shift Z, then R and Z to rotate around Z axis. We can see these shadows right there, and you can see there's already some castings happening. We have this like light inside the shadow, but I want this more pronounced from the glass object as well. So I will press Shift A and add a sunlight right here. Press G, then Z, move it up. Then hit period on a keyboard to switch to 3D cursor, and then R and X and rotate. And basically I'm creating the similar shadows as the HDRI, but now I will have more control and some additional light. So in the light settings, I can increase the strength to something like 2 and play with the color of the light. So maybe make this a little bit warmer and increase the angle a little bit. And now we want to create the shadow castings as well. So let's enable those with the light, but nothing happens yet because we need to select the glass. And in the object settings, go to shading and enable cast shadow caustics. And then on the background plane, we need to enable receive shadow caustics. And now you can see we have this effect right there. And now depending on how complicated your glass model is and how many refractions are there happening, these caustics will behave accordingly. So we can do the same for the cube. We can cast shadow caustics, and you will see this is now a little bit different. You can see the caustics are a little bit more sophisticated here. And now you can go to the render settings, light paths, and reduce the filter for the caustics. This should make them even more pronounced, as you can see right here near the cube. And now we can select the liquid and basically do the same thing here in the object settings. Do cast shadow caustics. And now let's switch this to object so we can see our material. I'll press Shift A and search for gradient. press Ctrl T to do the mapping node. And now press Shift A and do color ramp. Plug this here, plug this into the color. And I will change the bottom here to something like a violet color, dark violet. And here to something orangey. And then I will need to rotate this. The best way how to see the rotation is hold Ctrl and Shift and click the gradient texture. They'll help you preview it, and you can see the blacks around the left here. So you need to find the correct rotation. So I think this will be along the y-axis 90 degrees, and now you can see the black is on the bottom. And if you now hold Ctrl and Shift and enable principled back again, you can see the first color will be mapped to the bottom, and the top one will be at the top. So that'll give this some more visual interest. And now we can play with the background a little bit. Now you can, for example, move it a little bit. They'll make the HDRI visible. So this will look like it's on the edge of the table or something, which might be a good thing, but you don't want to see this like that. So let's select the camera, go to camera settings, and let's enable depth of field. And let's enable limits in the viewport display, and let's play with the distance. So let's see where the distance gizmo is. Here it goes. And I want to focus this on like the ice cubes here. So now let's reduce the f-stop to something like 1.2, and that'll give us this nice blur. And now this looks like it's, you know, at the edge of the table or something. And we can select the camera additionally. I have the lock camera to view in my quick menu under Q, so I will just move this a little bit here. And be careful, because if you move closer, you will move the focus as well. So you need to refocus the distance. Okay, and now we can play with the focal line. So we can maybe do a longer, like 54, and that will give us even more depth of field blur. So now let's select the background, let's create a new material, and we can do it a little bit darker. And of course this looks great with some texture on, or you can just add noise texture. Adjust the scale, create some color ramp, compress this a little bit, and adjust the colors. So the black is 0 roughness, so let's go like this. And here this will be full roughness, and let's just plug it into roughness. And you will get something like this, and then you can play with those details. So there's very simple wetness map, but this is very simple setup with like a default noise texture. You can play with the detail here, or you can layer multiple of these noise textures together to create interesting effects. So for example, I have the Fluent Materializer add-on, which have all of these like preset noise combinations to quickly create materials and maps like this. So now let's just play with some more lighting. So let's push Shift A, and we can add a spotlight here. Make it like really strong and give this more radius. Blend it more with background. Give this some warmer color as well. And enable shadow caustics. And then press R and X. Basically double down on the light with those others. So if I hide this, you will see this falls a little bit flat, but with this, it's more dramatic. So now basically you can go to the render settings and play with the color management a little bit. Sometimes some of the things might look better with Filmic View Transform, but AGX looks really great with this kind of scene. I will just increase the contrast a little bit and play with the exposure. And yeah, basically if you play this, this will just loop perfectly with the bubbles and, you know, with the ice cubes. And finally, when you want to render the loop, you go to the output settings, switch this to FFmpeg, and encoding to, for example, MP4, and choose your folder right here, go render animation, wait out your frames. You can, of course, in the output change the output format here to something like a square, for example, and increase the focal length some more. Just beware, when you render this, it will take longer than you probably used to, because the refractions, the caustics, and all that stuff will take a toll on your GPU or whatever you're using to render this. So just keep it in mind that this will probably need to run overnight or something. If you have a powerful GPU though, you know, it might not be so intense. So yeah, that's it for today's summer theme tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.